Hello students, welcome to this English video tutorial. In this video, we will be discussing a short poem, Spring and Fall by Gerard Manley Hopkins. Gerard Manley Hopkins was born in Stratford, Essex on 28 July 1844, eldest of 9 children to Manley and Catherine Hopkins. Both the parents were deeply religious, high church Anglicans. He established his fame among the leading Victorian poets posthumously. Posthumously here refers to after his death. He became famous only after his death. Two of his major themes were nature and religion. He expressed and explored the natural world through poetry, music, and art. He suffered depression throughout his life. He was depressed living in Dublin, which was away from England and his friends, with his heavy workload and how the city had fallen from its Georgian elegance of the previous century. He felt confused and dejected. Hopkins died of typhoid fever in 1889. Spring and Fall. The poem Spring and Fall was composed in 1888 and it was published in 1889. It is a lyrical poem addressing to a young girl, Margaret. He composed this poem when he was dissatisfied with the environment around him. Spring and Fall is a modern poem about philosophical definition of human life. It is a dramatic, meditative poem since it narrates an event, imagining a philosopher as a speaker in conversation to a girl named Margaret. The poem is about the reality of human existence that has been well introduced through its title, Spring and Fall. The speaker in the poem discusses a girl, Margaret, who weeps at the falling of tree leaves. Let's discuss the poem stanza-wise. First stanza, Spring and Fall, to a young child. Margaret, are you grieving over golden grove unliving? Leaves like the things of man, you with your fresh thoughts care for, can you? The poem opens with a tender and gentle address by the speaker to an imaginary child, Margaret, who is crying at the fall of leaves. As a philosopher, the speaker asks Margaret not to grieve over golden grove unliving. The speaker believes that the young girl Margaret equally cares for leaves like the things of man. In her innocence with fresh thoughts, she worries for the falling leaves. Margaret, as an innocent child, separation is a great loss for her. She does not know the meaning of death. Those first lines tell us why the poem is called Spring and Fall. Margaret, the little girl, is spring. She is in her childhood, the springtime of her life, whereas Golden Grove, with its falling leaves, is fall, that is autumn season. By using the two elements in this way, Hopkins is setting up the readers for the rest of the poem, in which we shall find that fall is also equated with the autumn of life, that is, life's dissolution. Here I have given you the meaning of grieving, that is to cause great sorrow or distress, and these are the annotations and meanings given below. Golden grove, the leaves or the tree looks golden because the trees have all turned into gold color due to autumn season. Unliving, losing its leaf. Fresh thoughts point out to a child's growing sensibility. Next, the second stanza. As the heart grows older, it will come to such sights colder. By and by, spare a sigh, though worlds of one would leave me lie, and yet you will weep and know why. In the second stanza, as she she here, Margaret, and her emotions grow older, she will not be so affected by such a sight. Her heart will come to such sights colder, that is less emotional involvement. That will happen as she ages, and she will be less affected by the falling leaves, that she will not spare even a sigh, even though whole world of forests are fading leaves, and it should lie accumulating on the ground. Though Margaret will gradually lose her sensitivity to the sight of forests losing their leaves, she nevertheless will weep. She will continue to experience that sadness of loss that formerly had been associated with falling leaves, and she will know why she is crying. It is not the girl Margaret expressing why she is crying, but it is the speaker who assumes the reason why the girl is crying. Some annotations are given here. Kindly go through this. Third stanza. Now, no matter child the name, sorrow spring are the same. Nor mouth hath, no, nor mind express what heart heard of, ghost guessed. What neither Margaret's mouth or her mind or her thoughts had been expressed, her heart has nonetheless already felt, and it happened because on a deeper level the reason had been, the ghost had guessed the reason. Here the ghost is referred to her soul or her spirit. The spirit has already known the reason why she is grieving. It had already determined the cause, the source from which her sorrow from the falling leaves had come, as well as the source of all sorrow that is to come to her. Here the poet reveals what it is that her spirit already knew, what it was that caused her to grieve for the falling of the leaves in golden groves. The last stanza. It is the blight man was born for. It is Margaret you mourn for. The blight man was born for is aging and death. The blight here is a curse, and that curse is aging and death. All sorrow springs from the first unconscious knowledge which the spirit within us knows, that everything that is born, whether leaves, trees, or human, will die someday. And that is why he tells the little girl that it is not the falling of the leaves she is mourning on that autumn day in her childhood, but it is her own mortality. Here, the poet has deliberately chosen fall instead of the British autumn to suggest the seasonal decline or fall of man from grace, or more metaphorically, fall death. Margaret lives in a state of harmony with nature that allows her to relate to her paradise golden grove with the same sympathy she bears for human beings. She goes through an emotional crisis which, confronted with the fact of death and decay that the falling leaves represent, the speaker is interested in the child's grief because it shows increase in human understanding about death and loss with growing years. The question is whether Margaret can feel sorrow at the beginning of autumn. The speaker knows that the child cannot understand. However, with her growth, she will continue to experience the same grief. He says that as a grown-up, she will be more self-conscious about its real meaning. The word worlds suggests a devastation or declining that spread without end, well beyond the bound of the title Golden Groove that seems so vast and significant to a child's perceptions. Life is basic to human experience, and it is absolute and all-consuming. Moving on, we have the annotation here given below. This is a brief synopsis about the poem Spring and Fall. We can also discuss about the language and tone used in this poem. The poem is written in couplets as a lyric in sprung rhythm. Each line has basically 4 stresses, apart from the last line which has 3 stresses. So a couplet, we already know from the previous video tutorial, it is a rhyming 2-line unit of verse. When we talk about lyric here, it is a song-like quality. Sprung rhythm is a term given by J.M. Hopkins to his versification. By it, he means a rhythm where or which is more free than that derived from a regular meter, but not free verse as such. Next, he uses of compound epithet, alliteration, and some good internal rhymes. Alliteration you already know from the previous poems that we have already discussed in the video tutorial. Epithet is the literary term used for adjectives. Okay, used for adjectives, and a compound epithet is where 2 adjectives or an adjective plus another part of speech are put together to form a single descriptive idea. For example, Golden Groove. Golden Groove is a striking epithet, and as in Wenwood, which contains layers of meaning. Next, the world of Wenwood is an effective image for a sad world. The overall tone of this poem is dark, because it is about explaining death to a young child who, for the first time in her life, is faced with it. When she sees the leaves falling off the tree and dying, the poem is talking about a very natural thing that happened to everyone, but it is a gloomy mood because it involves a child, and that child beginning to consider her own death, her own mortality. The theme here are innocence, death, and sadness. Innocent, the child Margaret represents the innocence in this poem. He begins very innocently by grieving over the falling of the leaves in the forest. But as the poem progresses, the speaker suggests that her grief is over a drawing realization that is inevitable. Death, the second theme, the child realized that childhood isn't permanent and that everyone has to die someday, suggesting that human mortality is a fatal illness. Next, we have sadness. The opening lines of the poem suggest Margaret's sadness over the leaves which are falling off the trees. But by the end of the poem, he says that she said about something different. It probably has something to do with the ever-present specter of death that the speaker has pointed out. That's all for this video tutorial. I hope you will have a great time learning this poem. Thank you.